Very good. And then he focused on the leadership, and within 5-6 sessions, he was good to go. Coaching can be one-on-one, and now these days we start also to have group sessions. As a coach, to me, it's the same, right? Instead of asking one question to one person, you just ask one question and then you see how people are responding. It's almost having people like on a panel. As a coach, you set goals, and I always make sure that those goals are realistic. You don't want to have a person who has some heart condition climb Mount Kilimanjaro, right? You can look at pictures of Mount Kilimanjaro if that's your goal, but set realistic goals, and maybe set goals within what is happening within the six months, a year. Don't set out goals that are like in 20 years. Be realistic and mindful of the time as well.
We have another online question. Clara online asks, what can we do with the topics of motivation when it's a virtual team?
What can we do with motivation if it's a virtual team? Very good. Virtual teams, I love virtual teams. I'm mostly working virtually, so you need to have an extra step. But also when you talk about that forming stage, you can have a virtual coffee break. So again, you make it more personal. You ask questions on like, what is keeping you up at night? How do you like your work? What is your participation in the work? And then you can get to know that person a little better. Obviously, if you can bring people to an organization, it's costly and time-consuming, so it might not always happen. But if you have virtual team members, make sure as a leader that you check in with them. And especially if that person or the team is in a different time zone, in a different culture. I was working for Nestle and we implemented the SAP, biggest SAP implementation probably ever. And we were working also with people in India, in the Philippines. So you need to make sure to check in with them and other cultures. And I have a slide with other cultures. Sometimes you need to ask different questions. For example, in China, when you say, and again that's a generalization, are you okay? Are you with me on this? They might say yes. And in the Western world, you think, okay, they got a piece of paper, they understand what it is. But for that person, that just meant they have received the paper. Nothing bad, nothing wrong. So you have to ask the question, have you received this piece of paper? What have you seen or what have you learned? So you need to ask the second question, and what support do you need for the next steps in the project? Versus when you are in the Western world, you ask one question, are we on the same page? And the person might just talk, yes, number 1, 2, 3, 4, good to go, next item. So you have to be mindful when you work with people from different cultures. That's when you come in at the norming stage. That's super important to include everybody. Maybe to have almost like a little Facebook, and on the United Nations Development Program, they have on their intranet, almost like a Facebook, so everybody has a picture, they have the biography up, and they also have their specialties listed. So maybe they work in finance, project management, they have knowledge about the Asian culture and, let's say, South Africa. So if somebody needs to gather a team, they can do a search and they can gather their team. I hope that's answering the question for the online. Again, coaching is asking questions, and it's asking a lot of open-ended questions, and these are the what, how, when. So when you ask those questions, what time will you be with me? You say tomorrow at 10 o'clock. But if you say it's okay to meet tomorrow, you can say yes, right? So if you ask just a question where you can answer yes or no, then you get less information. And you also have have to be thinking about people who don't talk so much, so more the introverted people. They don't start with blah, 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 blah. If you ask them a question, how are you today? They say, good. That's it. If you have an extroverted person, they say, well, I'm very good, I'm going to have this breakfast, I'm having this talk, and blah, blah, blah. So they go on and on. You have to stop them. So you need to make sure if you have a team, a virtual team, or a team that you see on a given day, that you ask questions and you don't overgo those people who might not be talking. So make sure that you set the tone when you do the forming stage. I will check in with you any given day. Everybody should have a voice. And sometimes as women, not focusing more on the women, we like to say everything has been said already. Why not reiterate and say, I agree with what Jose has said, I'm in agreement, so then you have a voice, you also want to say something. Don't forget that. Sheryl Sandberg of Google has a very powerful TED Talk, why we need more women in leadership positions. So if you need a little inspiration, listen to her TED Talk, and also her book, Lean In, is fantastic to read. And a lot of people are asking me, what about mentoring? This is now the new hot topic coming up. Mentoring can also be, or should be, confidential. It can be one-on-one or in groups. It's more about telling. So when I mentored this lady in South Africa, I sometimes tell her, like, you know, when I was in your situation, for example, I said to her, do you have a spreadsheet where you put in all the invoices that you have created for your clients? And she's like, no. So I said to her, I'm happy to share what spreadsheet I'm using so you can use that. As a coach, I would not have done that. I would have said, what is working for you? How will you compile your information? But as a mentor, I felt like I can share with her kind of like this is excellence and best practices, so she can learn from me. So that's a huge difference between coaching and mentoring. But obviously, a mentor should not present everything onto you on a silver plateau, right? So a mentoring situation is also a two-way situation. So if you are the mentee, you also are giving something to your mentor. And make sure you have a mentor. It can be a friend. Sometimes it's good to have a mentor outside of your organization, especially if you are looking into going into a different organization. If you have a mentor within the organization, they might not help you so much to leave the organization, right? So be a little more strategic on when you want to have a mentor, and also a mentor you can meet and talk and not really say, I need a mentor, but establish a relationship with that person. Ask questions again. Do you have another question?
Yes, another online question. This question comes from Arturo. His question is, when using executive coaching, how can I change the narrowable needs of an executive that might be reflected in his behavior in the company and may make him a toxic leader?
That's a very good question. Yes. Some of the CEOs, I did research on coaching the alpha male, and they say 75% of CEOs are alpha males or alpha females, right? So when you are in that position, you're thriving, you're thinking you're the best, and you don't care so much about the other people. And yes, it can be that you are a toxic person, and sometimes people don't dare to say, he's the bad guy. So what can you do? As a coach, you are sometimes also confident of the person. You're a sounding board. Because if you think, how many COOs or CFOs do we have in an organization? Usually one, right? I asked once that question to a person who is a COO, and he looked at me like, what do you mean, one? I'm like, exactly. So they are lonely. Many times they're alone, and they need to be comfortable to be alone. So then they don't get any feedback, how am I doing? So they can become that toxic person. So as a coach, remedies, again, it's tough to say, oh, you're the toxic person. But what we can do, we can have 360-degree feedback. So even with the leader, so then his direct reports, his indirect reports, and there's also sometimes a category of others. So you can ask clients, you can ask people, let's say you work with an organization in Latin America, in Argentina, or in Chile, ask a person from different organizations to rate you. So we get, again, a piece of paper, and also people can make comments about you. There certainly you have a column where it says, what about the communication skills? And if people are rating that person honestly, they might go to a 2 when a 5 is the best. So when you see as a coach there's a 2, you're like, can you elaborate what's happening? The other thing, if you have the time, if it's a one-on-one coaching situation, I would ask that I could be in a meeting. How does he conduct meetings? So you can sit in and you're just like the person as a shadow in a meeting, and then you need to peel the onion and say, what do people say about you? And they're like, oh, they like me. I'm like, okay, can we ask the people? And with the 360 feedback, we can see that. It's a tricky situation. Not everybody likes to hear the bad feedback, right? Not everybody likes criticism, but I think if you take the feedback, it's about growing. And some people, we also know they're not coachable, unfortunately. Some people don't like to listen. I'm right, I don't care, this is it. But then, do you think they're successful? People leave, right? And they're like, our retention rate is at 50%. Well, yeah, look at it. Do exit interviews. Why do people leave? Because of the leader. People usually leave because of the leaders, not because of the organization. It's usually the leader, the leadership who is not very well. So now, this is my passion, my little baby that I like to talk about, because coaching initially started with coaching for compliance. Again,